Your mind, it's time to redefine. You're the spiritual quest, leaving the rest behind. Ungovernable, breaking through the status quo. We untamable, watch our spirit elevating consciousness. Yeah, we on the rise. No system can hold us down. We're reaching new heights, breaking through the chains, breaking through the wall. Ungovernable energy, watch the empire fall.
Here we go. It is Sunday night. Welcome.
Yeah. It's a new moon.
It is a new moon.
Today is a new moon.
Yeah.
And it's just like
a good thing?
Yeah, new moons are for like starting things, right?
Okay.
But we've had crazy astrological times.
Well,
and they're gonna get crazy again. And this new moon cycle is
there's shit going down that we're gonna talk about. So
yes, but
does the new moon fix that, or
the new moon is a personal, individualistic thing? But no, it's like it's a break. So take a breath.
Okay.
Live in it for the next moon cycle, because shit's gonna get crazy again.
Well, regardless of whether or not it's going to calm down or continue to get even more crazy or take a break, welcome.
Maybe calm down with everything that's been going on is not necessarily common.
Well, we'll see. This is Ungovernable. It's Sunday night. We are live every Sunday at 7 p.m. We're a little bit late this evening, but 7 p.m. Eastern. I am Matt. This is Jocelyn.
Yeah.
We talk about everything and anything so that you can expand your mind, keep your mind open, because people that would want to close it also want to control you by doing that. So all right, we have a visitor. We have a dog in the room.
Yeah.
Actually, we have two dogs in the room, or
they could get rowdy.
The three-legged dogs in the room. So technically it's 1 3/4 dogs. But yeah, so we got a ton of stuff to talk about. You haven't really been following a ton of it.
No, I was on that vision quest.
Yeah.
And I didn't have energy, and then it took me a while to come down from that.
Yeah.
I don't even remember what we did last week.
Last week we talked about we like got caught up. So like, and believe it or not, so it stayed up on all of the channels except for YouTube, because we played the Paris Olympics opening, like
when that got taken down,
super cut of like all of the opening ceremonies.
Yeah.
And apparently that was copyrighted or something. So I have to put that episode back up on YouTube. It's everywhere else. So it's still on Rumble. It's still on Facebook. It's still on
And
X.
More stuff came out about the Olympics this week with that one.
Oh God, all kinds of drama.
And then the one they call him a child rapist. I don't know.
I'm beyond
I don't know. I don't follow it.
I'm beyond it. Oh, the one dude from Denmark or Belgium or whatever, who's like he's a convicted rapist.
I didn't know if he was convicted. I didn't.
Yeah, the one white dude. Yeah. But
and
anyway,
had that guy with the gun without.
I'm over that.
I thought you liked the gun one.
Oh no, I like the Chad with the gun. The dude from Turkey who just stood there and he didn't have all the gear and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And he just freaking rolled up and just hit a bunch of bullseyes and won a silver medal. I mean, that's hot.
I thought you liked that.
That's like skilled dad shit. That's awesome. No, we got other stuff to talk about. So there's some serious stuff happening. And it's like, I didn't even know what to title the episode. The episode is titled Economic Turmoil on the Horizon, because there's economic stuff we can talk about, but there's also all kinds of other stuff that
you were talking about the unemployment rate to me.
Well, yeah, but we'll get to that in a second, because that's like debt, the debt and unemployment and everything like that. But before we get there, we have other stuff to talk about. So today, the biggest thing as of this live cast has been the, I would call it protests that were happening in the UK. But then the protests turned violent because of all kinds of hell breaking loose. So let's see. I think this is the first share that we have. All right. Prime Minister condemns far-right thuggery as riots grip the United Kingdom. And then this article is from the New York Times.
Is the far right the same in England as it is here?
It's whatever they need it to be to invoke fear.
Oh,
right. So, and interestingly enough, so the I'll use air quotes, conservative party in the UK, because what constitutes conservative in the UK is not what constitutes conservative in the United States. But the Conservative Party in the UK just lost its majority seat or whatever in Parliament, and now Labour has control of it. So a more left-wing government.
okay.
And the Labour Prime Minister is the one who's dubbing these people far-right thugs.
Right. Okay.
So anyway, from the New York Times article, protests escalated over the weekend in towns and cities in England and Northern Ireland, with dozens arrested and more demonstrations unfolding on Sunday. Anti-immigration rioters attacked a hotel in the town of Rotherham, in northern England on Sunday, breaking windows and appearing to set fires at a hotel that has housed asylum seekers as riots continued in Britain. So I'm not going to read the whole article, but the gist of it is that there's been a number of these publicized violent attacks and things like that.
Okay.
One of which was, I believe, a bunch of little kids and parents were attacked at this dance recital or something. And it was a 17-year-old kid. The first reports were that he was an asylum seeker. Since then, that's kind of been changed a little bit to the fact that he was like the child of immigrants, and and there's all kinds of misinformation about like whether they're documented or not. But this is like a continuing thing. It's been a constant
well, we here
point of contention.
We here have looked toward Europe as, oh, well, they have open immigration and they're doing so well.
Well,
like
what's the we?
Sold.
What's the? There is no we, but what's the?
No. I mean, just in general, I feel like when all this stuff was coming out, the more liberal people, I suppose liberal, I don't know, were the ones kind of saying in Europe you can go anywhere. It's open immigration. It was sold to it sold here.
Well,
right?
yeah,
like it was going to be good.
Democrats in
and
the
how
U.S.
great it was working.
Like to point to Europe and be like, oh well, they're so compassionate.
Yeah.
Because they let so many
but
people
I feel like I've been hearing about France for a while. I don't know. I'm not like super into it, but I feel like for maybe a few years now, we've been hearing how France has been having problems with immigration.
Yeah.
Well, changing the culture.
So yeah, the problem is that, and a lot of people have different, and Margaret is voicing her her opinion on the subject, but I think a lot of people are trying to put their finger on what the issues are. And the question becomes whether or not these instances of violence are being trumped up by the media in order to stoke
kind of like the riots here
stuff. Well, yeah. So like trying to sow the seeds of separation or basically contempt between two different groups. Right.
Yeah.
And then the other component of it is, even if that's not necessarily like the majority of what's going on, there's all kinds of other things that are happening where say the philosophy of the people that are coming in isn't the same as the countries that are allowing them in, what they were founded on, so to speak.
Right.
And so these, air quotes, far right people, a lot of them are basically saying that the people that are being, in some cases, allowed over the border, and in a lot of cases, like facilitated, like actually transported over the border, they're coming into the country and they're not taking part in, or they don't share the same values or philosophy or that kind of thing as the people that are there.
you could make that, you could talk about that as in America. When people first came here, people came with all different. I mean, I suppose there wasn't a cultural right. Well, there was. We just, got rid of it, which would be like American Indian.
There is. I think, what's interesting is it's also, I mean, you're right. It's a timing thing, because what it was to be an American at the beginning, when Ellis Island was the main port where a lot of people came through and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
There was some push to make sure that people assimilated into the American way of life, but also it was just the very nature of coming to the United States at that point in time seemed to just bring about things in people that were American. They were,
well, that's what built the culture, right?
It was, exploration. It was seeking freedom. It was this, and so I think what's getting lost in this is, and we talked about this earlier, I think people don't fully appreciate, at least in the United States, and I think to the same effect is happening in Europe, this isn't just people that are randomly deciding anymore to come to the border. There's literally like a recruitment effort and an express lane that's being put in.
Well, isn't that to get? I feel like that's to get votes and stuff. And actually, I read an interesting article.
I think it's the cost of labor, but whatever.
Well, no, I read an interesting article about how we're going to need, like, our population is decreasing, and it's that part of the reason that they're pushing immigration so much is because they need to refill the coffers in a sense.
That's a really good point. And I would say that the economics, and, you know, part of the show today is going to be talking about money and stuff like that. The economics are causing people to have less children because it's more expensive. And they're trying to fix this. They're trying to put a Band-Aid on it. They're not trying to fix the economy. What they're trying to do, I feel like it's idiocracy. I need the meme. It's like, it's the economy.
You still need to finish the show with one of those like clips.
He's going to fix the economy. No, they're not trying to fix the economic circumstances. What they're trying to do is just put a Band-Aid on it. So they're like, you know what? We have a problem where, you know, the cost of labor is essentially causing a lot of these things to get more expensive.
They have to pay for so many other things.
And so they're like, well, if we just get like millions of low-cost laborers to come in, they can drop the cost of labor across the board.
Paying for all the other stuff.
Well, yes, yeah, but they don't care. Like that's a second order thing. They always deal in the first order. They're like, we'll deal with that when we get there, right?
It's still using people, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's always. I mean, tyrants and political types are always using people. I mean, that's just basically the question is what's the.
But I heard what I was reading was the longer piece of it was to boost our population. Like.
Well, no, that could be the way it's being sold, or that might be like a secondary reason for justifying it in terms of birth rates and stuff like that. But truthfully, at the end of the day, I think the most immediate concern for the people that are facilitating this, they're facilitating it to get cheap labor in, which is funny because the Democrats are the ones that are all like, well, they're seeking asylum and they're you should welcome them in because they're trying to be American by coming here and all this other stuff.
Are you sure it's not for votes?
And at the same time, they're lowering the cost of labor so that Democrats who are supposedly all pro-union, like you're basically undermining the unions. Yeah. These people aren't coming here and unionizing.
Right.
They're coming here and they're working in sweatshop type conditions.
Democrat or liberal.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
no, I mean like the union piece of it.
Yeah, the union is.
But they're also at the same time like voting for their own undermining of their own groups that they're trying to supposedly support. And they're also like marching in lockstep. They're also marching in lockstep to really wealthy people who stand to benefit disproportionately by lower labor costs.
Yeah.
Right. Like this is why people that still consider themselves like classical Democrats differentiate themselves from leftists or from what they call shit libs. Right. Like shit libs don't understand the consequences of the things that they're actually advocating for.
Yeah.
They just go for whatever the current thing is.
I don't know if anyone actually understands the consequences of what they're like. What they're voting for in general.
Well, no, they go off of emotion.
See what they want.
It's just off of emotion.
Yeah.
Like that's what it is. It's like I want to feel good, you know.
But no one thinks about our kids or our grandkids. That's the problem.
Yeah. No, I think everything has become a very recent.
Yeah, like
thing.
Take care of it's all the instant gratification and Yeah.
All right, so I'm gonna try and get this to work. So this is like a on the ground interview.
Did you put this? Is it sound?
I'm gonna try. Hopefully, I believe.
Did you share the sound?
I believe the share screen had the sound. Here, I will stop the share and redo it just to make sure I'm doing it correctly. Yes, sharing sound. All right. So let's see if we can get this to work. So this was shared. This was an interview shared by Wall Street Apes on X, but I don't think that's who actually took this interview. So let me see if
Who wakes up in the morning, grabs a knife, goes to a dance recital class, and stab? What are your thoughts on like what has transpired in the last few days? Sure. So the straw that broke the camel's back was years ago. The people are being lied to by the government. They're being lied to by the mainstream media. Law enforcement knows it. The government knows it.
Now, listen to this piece coming up and see if this sounds familiar to anything to you.
And essentially, the slaughter of innocents will push any nation, any tribe, any man over the edge. And that's what we're seeing here. we see a protest gathering saying absolutely no more. The problem then is there's 200 police essentially there to instigate problems, and then we have another problem on top of the lies and the deceit and that which everyone is so very tired of. What happened to those 3 little girls and those people that have been hurt it's not the final nail in the...
Liam, what?
So this is what did it make you think of when you first heard like protest, police,
Well, I was
exacerbation,
thinking of
all
like
this
the
stuff?
whole Antifa thing.
Like BLM type
Yeah,
stuff?
that's
Yeah,
what I was thinking.
that's
Where
exactly-
they had people they had people instigating or pushing or moving the crowd in a direction.
well, you're talking about people planted within the crowd,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Now also think about the fact that he mentioned police officers instigating.
Yeah, that
You
was
also
like
had-
insurrection.
You also had the same problem during the BLM protests and ensuing riots when there were riots, that also there were similar accounts of police officers exacerbating the situation and escalating the stakes in those
Yeah.
situations. So essentially what you have is you have like a boiler room in effect, where it's just like everyone gets jammed into the situation. Stuff is like emotions are high. And this isn't to say like to pass judgment on whether or not I think either side is correct. I'm just saying that's what the environment is. It's just a bunch of people that feel like their livelihood and their country and their families, safety are being endangered, right? And then you have maybe provocateurs that get planted in there because there's political gains to be made on certain
if it
areas.
gets a certain amount.
And then you have the police on top of that feel like that they need to crack heads whenever there's any kind of problems. And so it just creates this complete
Chaos.
cacophony of chaos.
Yeah,
Yes, yeah.
Totally
What most people think is anarchy, which actually isn't anarchy. It's nihilism. Anarchy is not that. But so anyway, so yeah. Now what happens after this is once the prime minister starts calling these people like far right provocateurs and stuff like that, then what happens is there's roving gangs now of like immigrant Muslim population that are now running around cities and like beating up the protesters. So now the protesters have a target on their back. That's now created
This just
this
sounds like
infighting.
insanity.
It is.
Is it built
complete
up?
insanity.
Like, is it, or are there like really safe places right now? Like, is it just in the big cities or like, what is it like country? What I don't even
No, there's like a couple of towns and cities right
Where
now
it's
where
just
it's like it's happening. Like out in the middle of the country, it's not happening.
Yeah.
Right. But even still, in those areas, it's fairly obvious that the intent is chaos.
Yeah.
Like that is because that's what you're getting. And so it just seems like no one is trying to like bring the temperature down.
Right.
Everyone just ratchets it up, right? Like it's
And
like
then people get hurt and
Oh, yeah.
livelihoods and storefronts and homes and they all just get ruined.
Yeah.
And no one picks up those pieces.
Yeah. And unfortunately, the people who are the ones that should really be held to task and the ones that I have to measure my words here. The ones that should be bearing the cost of all of this are the ones that have the most to gain, and they never bear any of the cost.
No.
They're always the ones that get off scot-free. No one ever, I said this myself, when the BLM riots happened, should have been fucking Beverly Hills on Rodeo Drive. It wasn't, but no, it was like in downtown, areas where it was like mostly poor people and black-owned businesses that end up getting burned and stuff. It's completely ridiculous, doesn't focus on where it actually should be happening. But, or where you can actually get to the people that need to be told that they're screwing everyone else over.
The whole idea of creating chaos like that allows for then you can't point a finger at one person. You can't.
And think about it politically. When there's chaos like that, you can push through all kinds of shit.
People's eyes are on something else. That's what I kept thinking about the Olympics. I was like, what are they trying to pass through? Like, what is happening right now? I don't even know, but I feel like something in the background is getting pushed through, or do you know what it is?
Well, no,
I don't know yet.
I'm not of the
I mean,
Alex
they're
Jones
definitely
ilk where
bird flu stuff is up. I will say that. They are pushing the vaccine at this point and moving it through, and
so there's also, I don't know if I can find like an actual article on this. There's actually articles been written in the past about how ridiculous the amount of business and politicking is that's done at the Olympics.
Yeah.
So like when
Hands shaking, money
yeah,
passing.
and it's not just like, you know, a company being like, hey, we'll build a factory in your country. It's like arms deals and freaking black market shit and all kinds of stuff, because there's just everyone from all different countries in one place.
And it doesn't look suspect.
It's just really easy to go between all the different ones and, you know, go with the highest bidder or whatever, right? Like, I'm pretty sure there was an editorial or an article written about that in the last couple of years. And
I feel like there's all this controversy over this one boxer and this other thing. There has to be, that's all everyone was talking about for like 2 days.
Yeah.
And so something happened during that. And then we were watching on Dell, and we were talking about how when they had all the computers go down, right, he's like, there's a little you know, there was a little bit of a thunder earlier, but I got like 17 alerts about severe thunderstorms.
Notice how the assassination attempt on Trump became like yesterday's news the moment that you know, update blue screen of death like millions of computers.
Well, it was interesting on Dell, because the other thing he said though was that whole blue death or whatever it was, it really got no play, and yet it shut down hospitals and our airports, and like I mean, it cost like worldwide that happened, and it wasn't just a second, and yet there's like a thunderstorm that rolls by, and I get like 18 notifications of like, oh, the air quality is bad today. And there's a massive, you know, so it is interesting what they try to keep your eyes on or off. You would think that whole thing with all the computers going down would have been something like, holy shit.
No, it was a thing, but it's probably more of a thing than most people thought it was. Right. And then the other thing is, it's a big enough of a distraction to change the news cycle away. I mean, there was a former president that almost got fucking killed.
Who's running for president.
And, and no one wants to talk about it anymore.
No, and there's so many questions like of how there's been questionings in the court. Is it a court? It's not a court case. It's just
which?
Well, when they were asking when
they were testifying before Congress.
Yeah, but like there's so much, and it's so funny that we just fall into whatever media puts in front of us.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but I'm telling you, for 2 days, all it was this boxer. And I'm like, first of all, I don't know what, it's just a sad situation. It's just a sad situation. I don't think there was any use of anything, but I'm like, what else is going on? Why am I thinking about this?
No, that's entirely possible. I mean,
we'll find out in a week or two.
You know, the moment people are infatuated with, it's the Roman Colosseum, right? It's like, it's bread and circus. You give them bread and circus and they'll pay attention to whatever you want them to pay attention.
Say, talking about the bird flu, a lot of people that I follow mentioned that this week. Mentioned that there were a few things that were passed through, and that this is definitely going to be something that we deal with.
So I think you were reading earlier that the WEF pact got
what was the country that's going to, Australia or New Zealand?
Well, no. So it got voted down, and then the story that you were reading said a bunch of countries are just pushing forward with it regardless. Right?
Yeah, and forced injections, but it's going to be. I think New Zealand was going to be the country that they were going to kind of beta test it in, like this idea of forced vaccinations and forced staying in place kind of a thing. So that's going to be happening. It's going to be in real time happening as a beta in New Zealand. And I read that this morning. So it's just,
we actually talked about that last week, kind of in effect, when we talked about Brexit, and how when the vote for Brexit happened and the British, basically the English, voted to displace themselves from the EU, there was all kinds of internal, basically they just didn't listen, right? Like there was all kinds of internal mechanisms politically that they used to essentially move away from the will of that vote from the people, and just continue to maintain that relationship with the EU for an extended period of time. The same thing can be said of this WEF thing, where it breaks down. There's no pact, there's no agreement, and yet a bunch of countries are like, you know what? But we're going to do it anyway.
Yeah.
Right. And that becomes really worrisome, because not just worrisome. I mean, it's essentially what the American Revolution was fought over. It was like, no, this is the will. And then you're going and doing your own thing anyway, and you're not listening to us. And so that's usually when shit starts to break down. It's when, you know, you could blame it on misinformation or whatever you want to blame it on. When people in the UK are rioting because they worried that their culture and their country are falling apart, a lot of that has to do with a complete lack of trust in anyone that they perceive as having, you know, supposedly having some kind of control over things and some kind of, you know, stewardship of the country and stewardship of the culture and stuff like that. They don't trust anyone, right? And I can't blame them. I don't trust anyone. I haven't trusted anyone for years now, right? Like,
I still don't trust that Biden's alive.
well,
I feel like they found out that his State of the were you the one telling me that
State
his
of the
State of the Union wasn't actually like his
live
clock went.
Oh no,
something-
there
read
was
something
there was
different or
some
something?
there was some picture of his watch or something like that, and there's some question as to whether or not it was doctored or not, right? Like,
pre-recorded.
I mean, that's the other
that video,
reality
he
of-
is different. Has he come out since then?
he looks taller, man. He looks
He
like
looks
a
taller
he looks
and
like an
his
alien.
like he looks swollen here. But what did he ever come out again after that?
No, I mean, he's had a couple of things that he's done recently,
He's done
but
out.
no, but Rogan talked about it with, I think, was
Mike
it Michael Malice or
Yeah.
someone else who was on his program recently, and they looked at the videos and they're like, no, he's like walking better, he's
Yeah,
taller.
that's what I said.
When you take pictures of him next to Joe Biden, the older pictures, he's like only like maybe a little bit taller than her. The new pictures, her head only comes to like his shoulder. It's like
That's
really
what I'm saying.
strange.
So all of that questioning went away when the Olympics came out, and like, right, like
Yeah.
there were so many things just got pushed to the side,
Yeah.
and it always comes back. They always bring it back to things like Roe v. Wade. They always bring it back to like the gender stuff because that's
have
the
to
things
bring-
that people get so.
They have to bring it back
riled
to
about.
the hot button topic to get people all ginned up so that
they
they're
don't think
focused
about
on
what's
that.
actually going on.
Yeah.
I mean, we're looking at like if they do the bird flu, which is insanity. They actually called it. I forget what they called it, but it hasn't even. It's never transferred from human to human. And they had like, I mean, I was looking at the statistics on it, and it was like, and they called it like an emergency. And I don't think it was here. Now I'm going to forget because I read it like a week ago, and I was in the middle of Vision Quest stuff.
Yeah.
But I was like, wow, that's crazy.
Yeah. All right. You want to keep talking about England, or you want to move on?
I do want to. I think I don't actually want to go to England, but
Oh.
I do want to experience high tea.
There are
I
still
want to experience tea in England.
actual tea, not testosterone. We were talking
No.
about
No, I
XY
don't want
chromosome
that.
boxers.
You know what? I am perimenopausal and my hormones are all over the place. And I don't even know.
You want cucumber finger sandwiches.
I
and-
want high. Is it high tea?
and
Is it called?
chocolate covered biscuits. Yeah.
I don't like. I was saying to a friend the other day, I don't actually have a want to go very many places.
Mm.
If I did go to England, I would go to Liverpool, just because that's where my family's from.
Okay.
Maybe they're in the jail records or something in Liverpool.
I think those are like the white. Is that like the white trash area of England?
Oh, my family are horse thieves. So they were. I'm sure they were at their log somewhere.
I'm so, if anyone from England watches this program, I'm very sorry. I don't know what the people from Liverpool
I don't
are
know
like
either, but I want to go to Liverpool. I mean, the Beatles are
They're-
from
they're
Liverpool.
probably
Weren't the
extremely
Beatles
nice.
from Liverpool?
Well, there you go. If they were from Liverpool, it can't be all bad. you
No,
know?
I mean, I'm not saying it's. I want to go because my family was there.
Yeah.
And the only other places I want to go are Ireland, and then we were just talking about Northern Ireland. All this stuff happening.
Yeah.
I don't know where in Ireland I want to go, and then Scotland because of Outlander.
Okay. Yeah.
And then I'm going to get you to wear a kilt.
I could definitely
You
go
wear
to
a kilt and stand on the mountain.
You got to remember though that Scotland's one of those countries that made it basically a hate crime to misgender someone. Did you know that?
I just want to have a beer in a bar.
I believe it's children of parents if they don't allow them to
crazy.
affirm or something like that. I don't know. I forget. It was nuts. But
It's a very strange world.
yeah, it's one of those things where all of those things are happening, and yeah, they're like kind of important,
That was a good to bring it back.
but they're not really that important in retrospect of other things. Like I got into it on LinkedIn with someone, and they're like, "Oh," and I was talking about taxes or something like that, and not wanting to give the government literally anything, and they start in on this like, well, what about fire departments and all this other
That's
stuff?
not where the majority of
And
their
it-
money goes.
And so like
anyway.
my immediate retort was I was being completely I was trying to be like actual
nice.
educated and not the way I would react on Twitter, right?
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
I would have just gone scorched earth.
But doesn't that madden you when you take the time to craft a response?
Well, no.
Try to help someone understand.
I'm used to it, and so I responded, and I was like, "Well, there's already paid fire departments." And then he's like, "Oh yeah, you didn't hear the story about the person that they let his house burn down because he couldn't pay $200 on the spot or whatever?" And I was like, "Yeah, because that matters compared to the million people that were killed in the Middle East by the United States over the last 10 years, right? Like." Understand the juxtaposition.
I've been on
People are like, we have to pay taxes so that we have fire departments, which, by the way, isn't even federal taxes. It's local taxes. And then I'm like, well, yeah, but let's think about the millions of people that have been killed by government. And they're like, no. This little problem with my house burning down legitimizes me paying a ridiculous amount and enabling tyrants to be able to kill millions of people.
Thinking about taxes, and I think that the only way to fix shit is to stop paying them.
Oh, well,
I mean, I think that's the only way to, but you'd have to get everybody to stop.
This is
and
actually,
no government workers would stop. And that's how many percentage of our people.
This is actually a good lead in to the next story that we're going to talk about, being Venezuela. But I'm personally convinced the only thing that fixes the problems that are happening in the world right now has to do with 2027, and it has to do with states and even smaller groups than states breaking away from the centralized power and literally seceding.
If everybody stopped paying taxes, you don't think it would fix it?
Well, no, it would drive the funding mechanism, but you have to understand the moment that happens, the government then turns all of its guns on the people.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
That's
then
what
you're
happens.
looking at revolution.
Well, I that's how the Civil War started. I mean, people refuse to understand that, or they don't get taught it. But the reason why the Civil War started was over money. It was over tariffs, and it was over the South's basically subsidizing of the lifestyle of the people of the North, specifically the Northeast. Like us living in New Jersey and New York area, like our ancestors, if they were in New Jersey and New York at the beginning of the Civil War, like we're guilty. No, we're not guilty. They were guilty of supporting the part of the war that basically ended up starting the war. And a lot of people will be like, oh, well, that's on the people of the South. But no, like the first shots were fired over money and over people's livelihoods. It wasn't fired over, anything that people try and trump up,
Yeah.
But I really think that like there's already on the legislative calendar in Texas, they've been trying to put Texas together for a long time. They're going to vote on it.
I don't think they will. They have, and that's the weird thing because Austin.
Oh, it'll come to a vote. It came to a vote in New Hampshire.
Austin
last year.
Austin is like in Texas, it's a very liberal city,
You
but
gotta
so
remember-
many amazing people are there.
Nah, but you got to remember the Texas Democrat is nothing comparable to the New York Democrat.
Or the New Jersey.
They're not even in the same universe. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, they have a little bit of sympathy for some of the things that like New York Democrats stand for, but they're not even close. I mean, like if it came down to it, the vast majority of people that move, specifically move to Texas, they'd be like, look, I don't want to move back. So like, I might as well stay
Did you
here.
just say New Hampshire seceded?
No. They had a vote
And it
in the
said
state
no.
house. It got like 30% yes, 70% no, but that was like a high number.
Yeah, they didn't expect it.
I could be misquoting the percentages, but it was not a
higher than anticipated.
it wasn't 2% for and 98% against. And I personally believe that that's actually the only thing that's going to fix anything.
And how is that going to fix anything? Because you're going to have all these cities. They'll be pissed off. People are not paying their taxes for them in the country.
Well, yeah. I mean, you actually think about it this way. In a negotiation, okay, your only opportunity to really, like, say you're going to buy a car,
Yeah.
okay, what's your biggest leverage? What's your biggest leverage in that negotiation?
That you haven't bought it yet.
Yeah. And what could you do?
Go somewhere else.
Walk away.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's the biggest leverage. When it comes to the federal government, you don't have that leverage. There's
No,
a
you're
gun to your
there.
head.
You're there.
You're like, oh, you're here. You're not going to leave and we're not going to let you. Right?
Mm.
It's going to take a state to be like, oh, yeah, try and make
You
a
think
step.
it'll be Texas, the first one?
I really think so.
You think it's
Yeah.
going to happen soon?
I think of all of the
2027 might be the year.
I think the only given enough time, if they can slow it down in Texas, and believe me, the feds will interfere in the political process in these states to try and dismantle these things. In Texas, if it doesn't happen, if they can slow it down enough, where it will happen is New Hampshire, because the Free State Project and the Republican push that's happening inside New Hampshire will eventually get there.
Yeah.
You
but
know.
it might take. But if Texas is going back to the whole talk about England. Texas is tired of the immigration thing.
Oh yeah,
I mean they're exhausted by it.
I mean, the problem that they have is that their governor is literally a politician's politician. And when they had the whole like barbed wire fence issue along the border, and then they sent the Texas
Wait, did they send the
troopers down there, and then the Texas troopers are the ones who put the barbed wire, and then the federal government went down. And the Border Patrol cut it, and now all of a sudden there was a standoff and a Supreme Court case and all this other stuff. The Supreme Court actually sided with the federal government because they said it's a national border, it's not just a state border, and that because of the supremacy clause that the federal government got to call the shots on that one.
That's not right, because that's fucked up.
It is.
Fucked up.
And I can tell you that could be one of the catalysts right there is
immigration.
And if it happens in Texas, it's like one of those things when something unthinkable happens, like when someone does something that everyone thought couldn't happen, a bunch of other states will happen. Like it'll go with them. So like you could see a situation where Texas pulls out, and then all of a sudden Arizona, and then maybe New Hampshire finally has the follow through.
It's
and
easier
you'll have a
if they have
handful of states.
Something like it would be hard for a middle state in the country.
Well, it would be difficult, but also at the same time, I mean, what benefits Texas, specifically Texas and New Hampshire, is they have ports.
Yeah.
So you could continue to trade both domestically and internationally. If all of a sudden, you're right, like if Nebraska decided to secede,
it would be hard.
They're screwed because they're landlocked by a bunch of states that haven't seceded. Right.
You would need to get the roadway up to them in seceded states.
I mean, you could technically secede if you were along the northern border or along the Mexico border, because then you could open up trade or more trade or change your trade arrangements with the international neighbor, but yeah, I'm pretty convinced that that's the only opportunity, because every other opportunity, like there's a bunch of people that want you've heard of the Convention of the States kind of thing. So the Constitution can be changed by 2/3 vote in the legislature, but then also you could circumvent Washington D.C., have a convention of the states where basically all of the states get together on their own and do a vote, and I forget what the proportion has to be, but those states can then
cuts out the federal
vote
government
to change the Constitution. Yeah,
really?
But
but New York wouldn't do that. Like there are certain, like California.
Well, no, you're living in a world where Washington D.C.'s tendrils are throughout every single state.
Yeah, and
so to do that, like a state would have to essentially shrug off that control that's permitted or even actively.
God, it makes it sound like I just watched the Alien Romulus preview, and that's what it does. It goes on their face and goes in. Yeah, that's what it's like.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. That is exactly what people from DC are like.
Yeah,
politicians specifically, not the normal people. All right, so let's see. We have Venezuela election. Oh, hold on. I'm not signing up for your subscription, Associated Press. This is from the Associated Press. AP review of Venezuela opposition provided vote tallies casts doubt on government's election results. So now take this with a grain of salt. So Maduro is the basically the socialist leader of Venezuela right now.
Yeah.
The people are trying to knock out the socialist government. There was a vote, and then all of the exit polls, like 70-30, looked like he was going to lose, the socialist. And then Maduro turns around and he goes, "Nope, I won." And then he just basically commandeer. Now, again, some of this could be misinformation because some of the videos are from old times. Some of the videos are doctored.
It's true.
The theory goes that
I don't know how you know anything is true.
Well, I mean,
to be fair,
you have to source it from multiple places. You can't just take one,
Yeah.
But to a certain extent, whether those videos are true or not, I believe his government and specifically the military took control or oversaw the vote counting after there was some kind of question, right?
Oh, then you can't trust it at all.
So you have to remember, in this headline, basically the Associated Press is reviewing the vote tallies by the opposition. So the opposition also has obviously a self-interest
Yeah.
in this. So you can't necessarily take it 100%. But the story goes, an Associated Press an Associated Press analysis of vote tally sheets released Friday by Venezuela's main opposition indicates that their candidate won significantly more votes in Sunday's election than the government has claimed, casting serious doubt on the official declaration that President Nicolas Maduro won. And then it goes in to talk about how many vote tally sheet images they oversaw. Basically, it accounted for 79% of the voting machines, and there was something like 500,000 votes that it looks like the opposition got that weren't awarded to them. And so regardless of whether or not that sways the vote, apparently 500,000 or so was close to whatever the difference was. The difference was 1.1 million. So if you award 500,000 to one side, it gets them closer. It doesn't necessarily mean they won. Or if those 500,000 votes were literally taken from one side and given to the other, that could sway and put them basically in a dead heat, right? So this is yet another instance where these things are boiling over because people don't want these very kind of authoritarian type governments.
People are tired of government.
And yet there it's like you, once you buy it, you're locked in. You're stuck. Right? It's like a marriage. It's almost like
That's depressing.
They don't, well, I'm not saying it's a bad marriage, but what I'm saying is
I didn't mean that like my marriage to you.
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate it.
But that's depressing.
It is.
You know, people are tired of government.
Well, the saying that everyone's been sharing recently is, and I forget who you attribute the quote to, but I believe it's something like socialism can be voted in, but you can't vote it out. Right?
Once it takes hold.
You basically,
what it does is it starts to take care of everybody.
It comes down to guns, right? Like that's basically what they're saying. And interestingly enough, Maduro in 2000, I'm going to be incorrect here, but I believe it's 2013 or sometime in between 2013 and 2017, Maduro's government ends up doing wide-scale gun confiscation. So all of the people in Venezuela can't defend themselves. Yes. Yeah. This story is out of NPR. Okay. Protests over election results in Venezuela aren't losing steam. So this was as of today.
So they're having protests.
Yes, and some of them very heated and violent. Protesters are continuing to protest. This is interesting. Out of NPR, protesters are continuing to protest in the streets of Venezuela following last weekend's contested presidential election. Current authoritarian, they won't even call him a socialist, by the way. This is the other thing you got to watch out with the press. Current authoritarian president Nicolas Maduro claims he won a third term, but the opposition has been collecting evidence that appears to undermine that conclusion. As the dispute drags on, Maduro has cracked down on protesters, while the U.S. and regional leaders have supported the opposition.
Why are we supporting the opposition?
Well, so if you remember, Biden actually stopped some of the, I don't think there was necessarily an embargo still on, but there was trade sanctions and stuff like that on Venezuela. He brokered a deal or he struck a deal with Maduro's government, and he said that we'll relent on these restrictions, thus allowing Venezuela to sell its oil on the open market internationally and make money, but you have to conduct fair and open elections. And that was the stipulation, right? And
because
so
we do?
Yeah.
Are we
as fair and open as US elections?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Was it supposed to be as fair as our elections? I don't know.
Who knows? It might have been fairer.
Wasn't it a ton of Venezuelan people coming over immigration-wise to here? Wasn't that like, maybe that was like a few years ago? Or was it not Venezuela? Where was it from?
No. You're thinking...
not Argentina.
No, there's a lot of people from South American countries that are... basically have gone through civil war and political upheaval. I think it's Nicaragua maybe.
I don't know.
It might be Nicaragua or like... Panama. But yeah, so could have been Venezuela. I could be wrong. But yeah, this is one of those situations where that they were supposed to conduct fair and open.
They probably watched our process and were like, that works.
Yeah, well,
for us. and now we can, condemn them for not being like it's really scary how much, it's really like even scarier to me. So I know this is totally off topic.
Yeah.
But I'm doing the Joe Dispenza meditations, and he talks about like all of the media and how it changes you and how they use all of the psychology. It's like dark psychology, right? They use this. Corporations and all this stuff use this dark psychology. So what he does is he kind of turns it on its head, and he uses like kaleidoscope images, and you're putting in what you want and what you want to manifest and all this stuff, right? I know it sounds creepy, but it's really great. And I think to myself, like, how far has the government gone in this dark psychology? Like it's like having little thing. Almost think of Dennis Quaid when what's the movie where he goes in that
Inner Space?
Is that the one where he goes into her body?
Yeah.
In the thing?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, what are we not aware of that psychology is playing on us?
Yeah.
I don't know, man, because we
got people talking about mind worms and all kinds of brain worms and all kinds
of when
shit.
I was young, my parents had this book, and I always thought it was great, but it was like an advertising book, right? And this is like 70s stuff, right? And it was like a picture. So they took ads and they like regular commercial ads and took pictures, and you would see like in the Coca-Cola commercial, like sex was etched in a piece of ice that was spinning in a glass, but our brains pick that shit up. Like we don't see it.
Yeah.
So that was even in the 70s. What the fuck are they doing now with all this other stuff? Right?
Yeah.
Like, so what can you even trust? Like there comes a point where you're like in your own mind, I can't trust that. Like what I'm thinking right now.
Well, no,
fucked up.
That's
like,
and so that
really
that
up.
actually goes along with the secession narrative. It's like, it's not that these things are going to clean up themselves. It's not that you can incrementally clean them up. The only answer is that you have to be willing to step away from them. Right. And that's the only way it fixes it, because if they lose your attention, they lose control over you. Right.
And then they just push it even more.
Yeah. Which, by the way, I mean, like, yes, we're drawing attention to these things, but I mean, I would rather draw attention to them so that I can, and even I fall victim to this all the time. Like I'll read a couple of articles on something. It'll have a common narrative to it. And I'll fall victim to be like, okay, well, this actually kind of makes sense. So this must be the storyline. And then you end up finding out like 3 weeks later, it was all completely doctored bullshit.
I mean, it's like at one point, you start to question your own mind, and you start to question your own ability to kind of goes to what was your theory you had the other day you were telling me about?
About what?
People.
What about them?
I forget what you called them.
People?
Not having agency.
Oh no, that's not my theory. That's like a Michael Malice thing. And in fact, I don't even think he's the first one to talk about it. No, but it really has to do with people being at different stages of actual self-awareness. So that there are some people that are self-aware, but they're like literally the lowest level of self-aware. Like they know they're a person, they know they're here, they know that they have experiences, emotions, and things like that. But in terms of their ability to put those things into perspective,
like to critically think, and critical thinking, the piece.
And it's not necessarily genetic. It could be upbringing. It could be an ancestral thing. It could be
that we're so pushed.
It could be environmental,
because we need to have 2 jobs and all.
Well, I mean,
like it could be just economic.
Think about it this way. Think about it this way. If you spend most of specifically your formative years in survival mode, like extreme poverty, lots of violence, malnourished, PTSD from all of those experiences, things like that. Are you really sitting there micro-analyzing, whether a woman is a woman in the Olympics? No, like you're worried about where your next meal comes from, right? And so from that standpoint, it's not that person is a lesser person. It's that their brain and their body have adapted to what they need to adapt to and pay attention and put their energy toward. I think a lot of the problems that we have nowadays are like literal rich people problems. Like we have it so good that we spend time worrying about it, whether a woman is a man or versus
this is what I'm talking about. You have the little Dennis Quaid thing in your brain. We have it so good, but yet our food is full of chemicals. They're all the vaccines they put on kids. We have, look at all the taxes.
No.
But how
what
much do you not have?
Yeah,
right?
but that's not necessarily what I'm saying. Like, so what I'm saying is more in mindset, right? Like mindset is you have it so good that you have like literally so many things
to think about
that you can think about. And your brain, because we still have some monkey brain to us, actually great ape brain, we get drawn to these things that are sensational. They're emotional. They capture us that way. When truthfully, the really boring shit is the stuff that we should be focusing on, right?
Yeah.
But so people are all on a spectrum, okay, of that. And so like libertarians and anarchists and certain people in certain areas get called autists because they hyper focus on certain things. It's typically they end up hyper focusing on things that everyone else finds boring.
Yeah.
Right. And it's not that they're autistic. It's that they're the way they basically triage what's important is different than everyone else.
Yeah.
That's not to say that they're more intelligent. It's just they have a different mechanism for how they focus on things. Lots of people. Go ahead. It's hot. Lots of people, I think, are living either in a state of survival mindset, meaning they couldn't give less of a shit about sensationalistic things, okay, because it's just not high priority, or they have it really good, and they just are drawn to these, you know, banal, ridiculous, Kardashian-esque issues that really don't matter, but they continue to fight over it. And if you get them ginned up enough, they'll get out in the streets and fight over it, right? Because it's all emotion. It's run off emotion. It's not intellect. It's not deductive reasoning, right? Like and so those people that are running off of either pure emotion or they just don't have the
bandwidth.
It's not just the bandwidth. They just don't have the perspective to be able to triage things and be like, okay, this is important, this is really unimportant, and kind of like upregulate things and downregulate things. Those people are very much kind of just vessels. Like they're hovering through life. They analyze things a little bit, but they're not really getting hyper.
I think you have to look at it too. When you look at these bigger problems, it's maddening because the amount, like, to feel like you don't have much of an ability to change it. Like, I think that's maddening for me when I think about like the food and like, or you know, the food supply, how everything, it's like, it's not an easy thing. I can't just work a few more hours. I can't just do things, right? You have to actually start to have conversations that will madden you with people.
Well, yeah,
and
but
you have to start to move.
That's the 2027 thing though. Like, all right, so the food chain, you can't fix. What you can do is you can, grow your own, which is very high input cost, that kind of thing. Or what you can do is you can find other people to join up with, or, you know, we buy into the co-op, right? And so the co-op is an alternative way to get the food, and maybe it's a little bit more expensive, maybe it's a little bit more cumbersome, or, we have to bring the box in every single day and put it back out, or every Friday and put it back out, right? Like, there's a little bit more input cost to it. But I think the issue is that I always get bunged up on like, why can't this thing be fixed or whatever? And I'm focusing on fixing the thing globally when I'm like, really what I should be focusing on is how do I fix this for myself
here
and my family?
Yeah.
Right? And politics is nosy Nancy's that are trying to fix the world for other people.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know if they're trying to fix it for other people, really.
Well, no. The average person thinks they are.
Okay.
The tyrants aren't trying to fix it for anyone else but themselves.
No.
They're exhibiting the behavior that most people should be exhibiting.
Let me ask you a question. Do you think if with the people who they are now, do you think if we were still like before the Revolutionary War, do you think people would fight for it?
So you got to remember,
you got to think about people now, though. Do you think people would get up and fight for it the way they did?
But you have to remember, the Revolutionary War was fought by 5% of the people in the colonies. A large portion of people in the colonies were loyalists, or they didn't want to get involved.
Yeah.
So that's the essence of, like, I've been geeking out on Patrick Henry, right? And so Patrick Henry had to go before the Virginia state legislature and get them to vote for not just kind of like resistance. He had to get them to vote for literally violent revolution. And that's the whole give me liberty or give me death thing.
Yeah.
Because the more passive members of the legislature, they were like, you know what, let's just try again. Let's go back to the king and talk to him. Maybe we can negotiate something. And he's like, he gives them the laundry list. He's like, there are 4 freaking warships headed for our coast right now. There's this many thousand soldiers stationed in the colonies ready to basically shoot or hang you just for being in on this conversation.
Yeah.
He's like, the time for negotiation has passed, right? The difference is the king at that time had, like you were talking about, much less technology and understanding of psychology to be able to control people. The king had a lot of hubris because he was like, it's the divine right of kings. I'm touched by God. I'm the king. I can do no wrong. How dare these people question my decisions? The tyrants that we have now have the same mentality, but the execution, they are light years ahead on. Right.
So what you're saying is, even if 5 people decided to revolt now, I feel like it would fail, because I feel like even if 5 people revolted, like 5%, revolted, you would have at least 40% of people who would like revolt against them.
Yeah.
So is that theory wouldn't even hold correct for nowadays? Like, I don't think we're made of the same things we were made of.
No, that's why I think secession makes more sense than outright revolt. Yeah. There would be no way that you could coordinate that across, all like the movie Civil War or whatever, right? The premise of that seems legitimate. And again, we haven't watched the whole thing. I've just watched spoilers and previews and stuff. But the premise of it makes sense. Like the country fractures into different regions, essentially, right? It doesn't make sense from the standpoint of a lot of the regions that they draw are weird. Like, I can never see certain states lining up with other states. But anyway, there's at least you could get a minority of people within a state to then push the political issue enough, or the political will, to either formally secede or to effectively revolt internally within the state and thus secede.
See, even that, I feel like maybe it'd be better in the middle of the country because there's more space. Like in New Jersey, you couldn't have a revolt. You could. I mean, there's people everywhere. I mean, maybe in different areas of New Jersey,
you could, but those people that would be loyalists, you're outnumbered here.
Yeah, you're outnumbered.
In a state like Texas, it would be easier because
they have a lot more space too.
The proportionality of people willing to actually make that leap versus people that would be loyalists, it's much closer.
Yeah,
and so it would be much more likely that a subgroup within Texas could actually push that issue. And like I said, it could end up being a legislative vote, or it could just be a bunch of people who got together and they're like, we're seceding. And the government's like, no, we're not. And they're like, yeah, we are. Yeah. And then they just can't stop them.
So you were talking about the movie Civil War, and I was thinking just how we're watching Bones right now. So if anyone watches like Bones from like,
oh my God, there's 2000? So many in this one episode.
No, in all the
in one episode, there were so many Easter eggs of stuff we're talking about.
I mean, no,
right
it's
now.
Crazy. So I was thinking, we were just watching Civil War, and it's almost like, is it preparing you for what's going to happen? Because that's what they do. Media does that.
Yeah.
But this is like 2008
Project
or something, right?
Yeah.
These Bones episodes, like season 9 of Bones. It can't be more than 2012. I can imagine. And they talk about crickets, bugs as food.
Yeah, bugs as food.
They talk about chemicals and GMOs. We've seen so many episodes where we're like, holy shit, we're dealing with that now.
And what's really funny is you can also see the difference. So that was put out by Fox. And so Fox for a long time was looked at as this more kind of like right-leaning set of networks, right? But even in there, you saw some stuff. So like the viewpoints on global warming, right? Like Bones.
There was a viewpoint on homeopathy.
Bones is,
like what?
She actually didn't shit on it, which I was impressed. She didn't
shit on it, and they used it naturally the next episode or something when they like saved him to go a little longer.
Yeah.
But all of these things are coming up, and we're watching it, and I'm like, when was this?
Yeah.
I don't remember them ever talking about cricket. She was like, crickets have zero fat and all protein. And,
yes, 0 empty calories.
Yeah. And I'm like, do you ever remember them talking about that?
No.
I can't even.
I gotta say, what's also funny is just how concentrated all of those things were within a handful of episodes, because that series started in 2008, 2009, right? Or was it before?
I think it was before that.
Because we're like 6, 7.
We're 9 seasons in.
Oh, 9 seasons.
It's a lot of hours.
So we're 9 years in. But then all of a sudden, 9 years in, past the first starting end of that series, at the beginning of that series, there's not as many of those like Easter eggs.
No, there's really not.
And then all of a sudden, within a couple of episodes, it was just like
I would say
bang,
season
bang.
8 and on. I mean, and it's always been a big blue, like police and FBI. They had that whole thing about Roosevelt, right? They had that whole thing about JFK.
Yeah.
Like, was he shot? It was like, I mean, they did play the line on some of them.
Did you say Roosevelt?
Did I say Roosevelt? Kennedy.
Yeah.
Like,
It's a little bit
Roosevelt, JFK. No, yeah. So, yeah. And then they actually do like play both sides, a lot of it. And I love the one guy who's like total conspiracy theorist.
Hodges.
So you get that edge, right?
That's my boy right there.
But, so I love the show, but I can't believe they were talking about crickets as food.
Mm-hmm.
And they were talking about the soil, and even Bones came out in this last episode, right? And she's talking about how awful it is. And they have this, they're like meat. They had meat flavored meat.
Yeah.
And she's like, what the, you know, basically what the
And
fuck?
they were talking about how the processing of the meat that they put into the processed food causes it to lose flavor. So then they have to artificially put flavor back into it.
On Bones!
And they're talking about that like literally 15 years ago.
Yeah.
And we already know, we know now that they do that stuff all the time. Or like a food will go through processing and lose color. So then they'll have to put artificial color back into a natural food to make it look like the food it was before.
And so I haven't jumped into too many episodes of things from when in the 90s and the early 2000s, but I'm surprised at how much I'm like, holy fuck, they called that.
Yeah.
They called that.
Well, yeah, but again, is it someone calling it, or is it some?
Like,
or
why would they talk about crickets as food?
Or is it subtly dropping these things into
Just get
episodes?
used to it. I don't know. Now they say you have to check and I forget what it's called, but they've changed the name of the cricket flour, and they're being used in, I think, General Mills.
Oh, hold on. Now I gotta look this up.
Like you have to know the names to look for, but it's being used in like some big companies now. You have no idea that it's in there. A cheddar powder. ACHETA.
What the fuck?
Yeah, and it's in things that you have no idea that it's in. Like some companies have begun putting it in there, so don't do it. And then I read this whole thing on how bad crickets are for us. It's like there's so much.
Well, no, the exoskeleton, you're not supposed, like, you can't process the exoskeleton.
No, there's like, so you would have to have so many of them to get what you needed, but in that so many of them, there's a negative. Like, I don't want to say it's not, like what's in apple seeds. It's not that,
like arsenic?
But it's like bad for bad for our bodies.
Yeah.
In there, what's in there? I don't know if it was exoskeleton, but so you have to look for a cheddar. It is there are companies using it without saying it. So I feel like it was General Mills. I don't want to say it for sure, but I feel like it was like General Mills who was using it in some things.
Let's see. I'm just trying to look for like popular processed foods that include cricket flour.
Now in some prepackaged. No, that's not what I'm talking. They're probably packaging that as. I'm telling you, it's like a few companies have started doing it, and you have to look for that ingredient. Very creepy.
This
one is actually cricket flour. I think this is what they're talking about.
I can't stand websites nowadays that
I know,
just
it's
pop
like
stuff up and then you have to.
So like, and I just can't believe it was in Bones. I'm like, wow, that's crazy. I mean,
and what's also crazy is a lot of times so this can't be unintentional. It probably has something to do with profit margin first and foremost, but also it can't be unintentional in terms of like introducing these things. It says on the back of packaging under the ingredients list, you can clearly see 4 other types of flour before the cricket flour is listed, meaning those 4 other types of flour are a higher percentage based off of, I believe, either weight or caloric amount than the cricket flour.
Yeah.
So it's like, you know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of
it's really bad in high doses. It's not good for us.
It reminds me of in Big Bang Theory when Sheldon is strategically putting small amounts of blended up moth into the roommate's food, and he unexpectedly he lets him know one day, and he was like, I was doing an experiment to find out at what percentage food begins to taste mothy.
Oh no.
That's what this shit seems like. Like, let's just put a little in.
Though, but it just
and then we'll put a little
people,
more, and then
it is
we'll put a little more.
already in food and in some major brands. So you got to look for that. I think a cheddar is one thing, but it's also 2 other names or something like that. I can find it. If you chat, I'll try to find it. Does that say, are there crickets and Cheetos?
Oh my God. Glad I don't eat Cheetos, but
I'm going to look it up. I'll see if I can find it.
A cheddar is the big one, but There's also, so you also have to watch out because there's certain types of protein powders that might be added into, say, like protein shakes and stuff.
Yeah.
Where they use it. It's that is like, whoa.
Exploring the adoption of cricket flour by.
But so that also highlights kind of this talk of, you know, secession. It's like, or even the free market concept of like voting with your dollars or voting with your wallet. The only way that this stuff stops is people don't do it anymore.
Yeah.
Right. And they find an alternative that doesn't, you know, acquiesce to these certain types of agendas and these certain types of movements. And it's like, you know what? There's no problem if people want to, if people voluntarily go out there and try it and they're like, yes, I want this. But more and more we're becoming aware of the fact that these big kind of like trends, they're not started organically. They're thrust upon people and they're done very forcefully.
Yeah, and you don't even, they're hidden.
And what they'll do is they'll make the economics work for it. So like they'll subsidize using your own tax money and money borrowed from your grandchildren's grandchildren.
I mean, the scary thing is that
in order to subsidize it and
nobody
make it cheaper.
is caring about what's happening to our kids and our grandkids. Like, so much is crazy.
So
I'm still looking.
While you're looking that up, this leads us into the third topic for this evening's episode. A reminder, we're going on an hour here. We got a little bit more to go. If you are watching or listening, help us out. Give us a thumbs up or a subscribe, a follow, depending on what platform you're on. If you're listening on any of the podcast platforms, a review goes a long way to help us as well. So just a reminder on that one. All right. This is the third topic that we're going to talk about. And this is something that happened this past week. Vicious spiral. This is an article out of Forbes. Vicious spiral alert issued after Donald Trump. We're going to talk about the national debt, but we can't do it without talking about Donald Trump. Vicious spiral alert issued after Donald Trump proposed a quote unquote massive radical plan to pay off $35 trillion of U.S. national debt. I will spare you the article because it is based off of Donald Trump rational thinking, which is very questionable most of the time. He wants to use Bitcoin to pay off the debt.
Someone should fucking pay off the debt. I don't know how it works. Did we go over it last week? It was $100,000 per person.
Oh.
That would be like $500,000 for us alone.
So I will look up usdebtclock.com. I believe it's is it usdebtclock.com or .org? But the idea that you can use Bitcoin to pay off the national debt, being the U.S. government, is a completely ridiculous idea because it essentially just turns into yet another variant of the Ponzi scheme that's currently happening. Because if you think about it, the U.S. would have to
holy crap, what is that?
Tax or borrow money to be able to buy the Bitcoin. Now, the largest holder of Bitcoin is the U.S. government. And Bitcoin currently is at 63,000, give or take. It's had a couple of bad weeks here, or one bad week, along with the rest of the stock market. But you would essentially have to inflate the currency to buy more Bitcoin to eventually pay off the national debt, which is absolutely ridiculous. Bitcoin maxis would tell you, oh, just hold on to the, billions of dollars of Bitcoin that the U.S. government already has. But even that's ridiculous because the U.S. government will continue inflating its debt away. And eventually people will be like, you know what? We're not doing it anymore. We're not going to pay for it anymore. If they do put money into Bitcoin, they will be essentially hyper-inflating the U.S. dollar in order to get there. And it becomes a self-deflating process to be able to do that. You also have to remember that Bitcoin that the U.S. government owns was essentially taken from other people. They say for criminal enterprises, of which Trump has promised to pardon.
It's not,
yeah, Ross.
Yes,
Ross Ulbricht, who ran the Silk Road. A lot of that Bitcoin that the U.S. government owns is as a result of basically taking the Bitcoin that was involved in the Silk Road. So if I share this screen, this is the U.S. debt clock. All right, there's a lot going on here. If you're not familiar with it, usdebtclock.org. top left, it shows you the total U.S. national debt at $35.1 trillion.
Yeah, so last week it was at 34, right? But that was just because it was estimated.
34.5, 34.6.
Yeah.
You also have to remember that this varies over time because sometimes tax payments come in and then it goes down a little bit and then it goes back up.
This is insanity.
Per U.S.
You're
citizen,
watching it go up.
per U.S. citizen, 104,000. So just in our household alone, that's $500,000 of debt taken out on our
And
backs.
three of those kids are not even 18.
Correct. Per taxpayer, so for the two of us, that's each one of us owes $268,000
On top of the
apiece.
104?
No. This just, if you take the full citizenry and break it down by people who actually pay taxes, wink, wink, it's
Wow.
268,000.
Wait
per
a minute. Are you
taxpayer.
saying 1 in 2 people don't pay taxes, or 1 in 3 people don't pay taxes?
Well, no, kids is a big piece of it. People that are below the poverty line is another big
or
piece
retired,
of it.
I guess.
Retirees below a certain income level. Yes. Yeah. What's also interesting is they've added a bunch of stuff here too. So federal tax revenue is just below $5 trillion per year.
Why is the spending, U.S. spending federal, going up as fast as the debt?
This is how much we average per year.
That's
So
the spending.
We
But
bring
why is
in
it going up?
so we bring in just under 5 trillion, and we're currently spending just over 6.8 trillion. That will go up based off of how spending bills are apportioned. So like a spending bill doesn't just say it's like $1 trillion spending bill, right? But it's phased in over 10 years. That spending doesn't immediately hit the budget the first year. It hits it over time. And so that spending over time
We pay
goes
more
higher.
than $14,000 revenue per citizen in federal tax.
Yes, we definitely pay more than 14,000. This is just the average. So depending on how much you make,
Is that
you're-
why
you're
we're
given
for like
the privilege.
or is that why we're for bringing the minimum wage up so that people can pay more of the tax?
that's a
Is that-
very interesting point.
Is that we need tax money, so we
We-
better get that minimum wage up.
We can definitely talk about that. And
You know what?
again, how people don't understand the full ramification of the things that they ask for. When a politician asks or demands that we increase minimum wage to whatever, it's essentially a way of pass-through taxing people. And so it's either businesses end up paying more tax, or if they pass through the wages to their employees based off of the minimum wage, they then are passing that higher tax burden on the individuals, which, by the way, puts pressure on employment because lower skilled jobs are
In this
typically
day
the
and
ones that
age
are
where you
minimum
have
wage
things
jobs.
like you go to a store, like even a Walmart or a Target, and they have maybe one aisle, if any, open with an actual person.
It's all automated, man.
I mean, it's like all those jobs are being taken.
The more you and this is why they're shipping
It's
in
very much idiocracy.
This is why they're shipping in immigrant labor, is because if every citizen has the right to a certain level of minimum wage, then if you want to pay lower wages, what you essentially need is non-citizens to work.
But yet they are open to our medical and our systems. So then you're paying for it. It doesn't equal out.
Yeah, again, these people are not.
They're not thinking about it as a functional doctor would.
They're intelligent. They have no ethics, so they don't care.
Yeah.
Like they don't think, like, people that think politically are awful people. I'm sorry. Like, that's just, the more you spend time with people that think politically, where like the political agenda is how they think, they typically think like a non-human.
Yeah.
They literally think in terms of how they can gain advantage politically, which is not a human thing. It's like an awful way to think. We have a half-blind dog down here.
You should get
chilling
her
out.
on you so she can say hi.
Oh, I don't know if she will. She's been freaked out by the thunder all day long.
Yeah. She has.
So yeah, 35 trillion in debt.
That's crazy.
The stock market had a little bit of a shit fit this past week because unemployment is rising.
Okay, so that's what you told me the other day.
Yeah.
4% was supposed to top out at December, and we're already at 4.3%.
Yeah. So the Federal Reserve,
which doesn't sound like a lot to someone like me, but if you start looking at it, it's a lot of people, right?
Well, no, I mean 0.3% of the overall working here. I'll do the math for you right now. So let's see, total number of workers.
Because you're like,
US,
what's 3%, right?
Total number of workers is 157 million. Okay. So if we pull up the calculator, 0.3% is basically 0.003. So, all right, why is my brain not working here? I had the calculator up before. What the heck's going on?
I don't know. You're not on a Mac. And
yeah, that's another issue.
It's another issue, I know.
All right. So calendar's up. I mean, the calculator is up.
You're sharing the calculator?
Yeah, I wanted people to understand that I'm actually doing the math and just not making up numbers. Here we go. All right, so 157 million, right, times 0.003. So that's literally almost 500,000 jobs.
More than they anticipated in December.
That have been lost, more than the Federal Reserve, or that's not a very accurate way of putting it. What it does mean is 471,000 less people are employed right now than they were anticipating would be employed at the end of the year. And we're not even at the end of the year yet, and employment numbers are starting to get worse. So the other issue that you run into is a lot of people pay attention to the unemployment rate, meaning like the percentage of people that say they want to work but can't find a job.
Been saying for a while that it's bad because they're people they don't count.
The absolute number is less important than the direction and the velocity at which it's moving in that direction.
Yeah.
Okay. So if it's moving up and it's doing very slowly, that's just only slightly bad. That's not really bad. If it's going up and it's going up very quickly, that's really, really bad. Right. And so like when you look at unemployment numbers from 2020 from COVID, you'll see that the unemployment rate, here we go. Unemployment rate chart, images. All right. So, wow, this is great production value right now.
Wait, what? What are you talking about?
Okay. So this is the unemployment rate historically.
Oh, that's 2020.
Yeah. You see, so hold on. I have to pull this up. This is from Statista. And this is a chart of unemployment, just runs up to 2020 essentially. And what you see,
that's awful.
What you see here is, let me just make sure this is showing up. Yeah, there we go. So what you see here is every single time that you have a really bad recession, unemployment doesn't just kind of like tick higher over time. It spikes, right? And typically when it troughs and moves sideways for a little while. Everyone thinks that everything's okay. So this was before 2020. The last time it happened was 2007, 2008, before the great financial crisis. And it ticks up. And then all of a sudden, whoosh, you see this huge elevator move,
right?
And that's
3%, not 0.3%.
Yeah, no, I mean, 2020, we saw huge unemployment. But what you have to remember is you also have to track it from the trough to where you're at. And so what happened is we bottomed out at about 3.5% unemployment. So technically we've risen almost a full percentage point, basically 0.8% in the unemployment rate in a very short period of time.
Okay.
And that means that the rate at which people are losing jobs and not able to get them back is happening very quickly.
Yeah.
And so if it continues to happen that way, it ends up creating this feedback loop because less people with jobs means less people buying things,
right?
Which means less revenue, which means more people get fired, and it just feeds on itself, right? This has been due for a long time, and kicking the can down the road has made this worse and worse over time. The other thing you have to remember is there's all kinds of other economic indicators like, and to get a little nerdy, the inversion between the 2-year and 10-year yield in the U.S. Treasury. When it inverts, it means that actually when it goes inverted and then de-inverts, meaning when the interest rate in the 10-year ends up going below the interest rate in the 2-year, and then it fixes itself back again the way it's supposed to be. Once it fixes itself, within the next 6 to 18 months, you get a recession.
Right.
We've had the worst inversion for the longest period of time.
Did it just fix itself?
Since 1929.
Did it just fix itself?
Remember what happened in 1929, right?
The Great Depression.
Correct. Now, what we have here is the inversion right now stands at less than 0.1% after months and months and months and months and months of it being 4, 5, 6/10% inverted.
Mm-hmm.
So it is very quickly de-inverting. And once it de-inverts,
does it happen fast?
Typically, well, it can happen anywhere in between the first 6 months. I mean, a lot of people are calling for recession starting in like September, October. And that's when the Federal Reserve is supposed to start cutting rates. They're always late when they cut rates. I can't stand the Federal Reserve because they manipulate the market and they actually don't add any value whatsoever. If anyone tells you that they're there to, like, you know, maintain the value of the currency or whatever, no, they're there to facilitate the theft of wealth from poor people to rich people. That's all they do. They tell you that it's for all these altruistic reasons, but it's not. But so they're supposed to cut in September.
So we have
Everyone's calling for a
economics. So
recession in September.
There's a lot going on. We've got this presidential thing,
When
and I still believe
when the shit hits the fan, you're gonna need silver, gold. Some people say Bitcoin. I'm not sure if I'm sold on that just yet, but silver, gold, and
we have these
things
elections
that actually
coming
have
up.
value.
I don't know what's going to happen, but I don't think they want it to happen. And we have this bird flu looming. We have all of this unrest, right? We have so much going on in so many different areas. This new moon, take the breath. This
Calgon, take me away.
Yeah, just for this new moon cycle. Just try to fall in love with your life for a little while, and then it'll all come back, like September, October, and then we're going into some crazy ass shit. We're going to the age of Aquarius. You know, that's what part of what this 2027 is. You know, but there's going to be some shit that has to happen in order to be in an age of Aquarius.
So you're saying there's some crazy stuff,
crazy shit going down, and it's going to continue to 2027. I was just
thinking the other day about
people. Like, there were people who said there was going to be an assassination on President Trump. Just looking at the freaking, like, they said it beforehand. It's like known. They have it because of astrology. Like, that's fucking insane to me. But people did it ahead of time, and you can go back and check out their posts.
I was just thinking, going back to the whole like nerding out on like Patrick Henry speeches. I'm reading these speeches, not just of Patrick Henry, but of other people like, you know, Madison and those types, and listening to the great orations of these people that inspired people to take up arms and fight for
we don't really have
their own freedom as well as the freedom of their families and their future generations, right? Like these people that ran for elections, and they ran on things like, you know, look, after the Constitution was implemented, basically it all started to go to shit. But they actually ran on ideas. They actually ran on
fixing and
policies and things that they wanted to do to better the lives of the people around them. Now, the campaigns are about, the vice president having marital relations with a couch.
What?
A ex-president. Yes, yeah, you didn't even hear that one.
No.
The ex-president, you know, having a sex scandal with a ex-porn star and paying money.
All this is stupid because I feel like every politician has these things.
We have a current politician who is in the midst of, like, juxtapose this. Like, probably, you know, we've had presidents that died in office. We had presidents who had really bad health conditions, but none of them were mentally ill. We have a mentally ill president now.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because of, and you could say whatever it is. You could say because of some kind of malady or just time, right? But we have a mentally compromised president. We have a first family right now that has the first son does crack and sleeps with hookers and molested his niece.
It definitely doesn't reek of what politicians were.
This is so far, like,
it is idiocracy.
When Watergate happened, people were appalled. Like,
that politician
Nixon and the party basically spying on voter rolls and trying to gain an edge or something. People were appalled.
Yeah.
They were like, that is egregiat. There's a sanctity to the role of the president and elections and all this other stuff.
Hulk Hogan went up and was
that juxtaposed to the retardation that we have right now. A country
what is going on?
founded by people that gave great orations and filibustered against things for days on the floor of the legislature. And other people that basically, right now, the two candidates, the former presidential candidate, talking about who's better at golf during a presidential debate. We have the new presidential candidate. You got to hold on. I got to play this.
You know what it is, though? You know, when you're looking back at when we first fought the war to come here and begin everything, that was like the building, the stepping stones, right? Maybe we just got too comfortable and allowed too many people to. I mean, obviously we got too comfortable because look at taxes, look at what people are willing to give up.
Okay, I can't even. This is
I've seen this one.
The guy who was the president. Now we're going to replace him with this. Hold on, I got to put this up. This is the current vice president of the United States. This isn't even just a candidate. She currently holds office as the vice president of the United States. This is her answer on how to fix inflation.
What else are you going to do to fix this problem with inflation?
All right, thank you. Well, let's start with this. Prices have gone up.
They've gone up.
And
that's inflation.
Families and individuals
are
dealing with the realities of
she's looking at notes.
That bread costs more, that gas costs more.
Let's see, what costs more? Bread and gas.
We have to understand what that means.
Yeah.
That's about the cost of living going up.
Yeah, that's inflation. Yeah.
That's about having to stress and stretch limited resources.
We're stretching.
That's about a source of stress for families that is not only economic, but is on a daily level, something that is a heavy weight to carry.
Wait, hold on.
It is something that we take very
Here's her
seriously.
answer. They're going to take it very seriously.
And we know from the history of this issue in the United States that when you see these prices go up, it has a direct impact on the quality of life for all people in our country. So it's a big issue, and we take it seriously.
That's how she's going to fix it.
That's the answer?
We're going to take it very seriously. That's going to be the solution.
It's really bad.
We've gone from
really
give
bad.
me liberty or give me death to we take it very seriously.
But
that's it.
There was no answer. I've seen that one, and I was like, "Is that serious?" I don't understand why if Biden is not able to run for re-election, why he isn't out of office right now. I don't understand that.
Again, you're that's the
That's
circus.
a little thing.
That's the circus. Okay.
I do though.
I mean, if you really want to ask the question, how was he allowed to be in there in the first place if he's on cognitive decline, right? Then the follow-through question is who actually runs the government. No one wants to really get the answer to that question because they know the answer to that question.
Yeah.
The answer is the president does not run the government. The people you elect doesn't run the government, okay, or don't run the government. What the best thing I heard was someone responded to a video of her giving that answer, and they were like, Kamala Harris reminds me of someone in grade school who has to give a report on a book that she didn't read, but she still has to give the report in front of the class.
So she still has to stand up. That's a good one. I didn't see that.
It's like in inflation. Prices have gone up because of inflation, and people are paying more because of inflation.
And it hurt. We have to
and it
stretch.
hurts. We have to stretch things because of inflation.
But she's kind of come down onto the whole Roe v. Wade thing. She's pulled that back up for her people.
What about her explaining, dude? You seen her explain the war in Ukraine?
No.
You don't remember this? Oh my God.
I didn't even know we had a border czar. I didn't know we had any.
Let me see how long. Now, granted, this is a Fox News feed, so you're gonna have to take. Oh,
that's loud.
Sorry, that was really loud. 1 second.
Yeah, it's from the Trump war room.
Let me see if I can. But this is not doctored.
But it's just what she said.
This is not doctored. This is the actual. Here we go.
So Ukraine is a country in Europe. It exists next to another country called Russia.
Facts.
Russia is a bigger country.
Facts.
Russia is a powerful country.
Yeah.
Russia decided to invade a smaller country called Ukraine.
Yeah.
So basically that's wrong.
What? I never, ever heard her
That's
say
the
that.
entire history of the Russia-Ukraine war.
Stop. Stop.
They're next to each other.
Stop.
They're countries.
And Russia's bigger.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Ukraine is smaller.
Yeah. And Russia invaded Ukraine.
And it's bigger.
That's it. There was no history before that, by the way. Like
That's
nothing
insane.
existed before Russia invaded Ukraine.
This woman is our vice president. I don't know.
Michael Malice said
I
it is.
can't.
Michael Malice said it is ableist to be critical of her. Do you know why?
No.
Because she's retarded.
Stop.
He's
Well,
not wrong.
You know what? In the end, I think like you know what? I don't even know what to say about it, but idiocracy always comes to mind. I don't know. That was like one of those media things that called that.
We
shit.
are. We are approaching
You had
peak
Hulk
idiocracy.
Hogan, pulling his shirt. Was Hulk Hogan?
Mhm.
Hulk, pulling his shirt
Yeah.
off for America.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
it was very like. I'm not talking one side. I'm talking both sides. It's very, very strange. I have to say, very strange.
Now you got me looking up Hulk Hogan versus Hector Camacho.
Oh, someone did it? Did someone do it?
Hold on.
No.
No, there were side by sides.
There were side by sides?
Yeah, but I don't think anyone. No, this is all like old footage of.
What I'm saying is it's
wrestling.
really scary because when I saw Idiocracy, I wasn't thinking at the time that would be what our government would look like.
That's what I'm saying, though.
And now I feel like
When-
I'm like, shit.
When you go
It's not
back,
that funny anymore.
when you go back and you actually take the time to read the words that were written or spoken by these people at the beginning,
in the
of
beginning
the United States,
when it mattered, and people had,
then you juxtapose it to the people that are our leaders now.
yeah.
It's like it's not even in the same
Thomas
universe
Paine.
of reality.
That's who I was reading, was Thomas Paine. In
Yeah.
Morristown, there's a statue with all of his writing, a lot of his writing on it.
Yeah.
And I like Thomas Paine.
Yeah, he was all right. I don't
But,
think he
like,
was necessarily
Well, I think he was better than some.
the best, but even the people
even
even the people I don't agree with, even the Federalists,
they
were
spoke different.
were intelligent orators. They were great, like people of presence. Okay, these people are ridiculous.
You wouldn't want their quotes on a statue.
No, well, I mean,
you won't see that.
like
in a
where
few
did it
years.
really go downhill? Did it go downhill with I did not have sexual relations with that woman? Is that where it started to like?
Well, Obama was an orator.
Really go
Do you
off?
think that Obama did that? He was an orator. He was like this person who
Obama had
gathered and had good words, right? So do you
Obama
think
had a
he
much
was-
better presence.
Do you think he was like akin to those first leaders?
No, I would say Obama was less embarrassing than. I mean, I would have to give it to him. Of the last, let's see, Biden, Trump, before him was
Clinton.
Well, no, was Obama,
then
right?
Clinton.
But instead of Obama, then you had Bush, Clinton, right? Like
Yeah.
that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
You had Reagan.
6.
Reagan was a good orator too, though also an actor. So I suppose people would say he was great.
Reagan had
I
equally,
can never forgive him for the 1986 act.
Reagan had equally dumb moments as he did equally good moments. Like he had good one-liners and stuff. But I would say easily of the last 6 to 7 presidents, Obama is the least
Embarrassing.
I would say.
He had a little bit more stature.
Now his policies are
Awful.
completely socialist.
Yeah.
Like he took this. So it's also interesting to follow the path because the Clintons and specifically Bill Clinton sold out to corporate America. So that was the moment that Democrats really started to kind of go off the tracks with what they used to be, and then what they've become. They become basically bought by a certain group of corporations, specifically Wall Street. And then the Republicans have been bought by, oil companies and other things. And so Clinton starts to kind of go off the tracks. And then whatever like little fire was started by that, like Obama dropped like a nuclear weapon
that
on
was
it
really bad
and
with
went
that.
full socialist in terms of that direction. But like, I mean, as far as just presence and, Jim Brewer was doing the bit where he was like, if aliens landed today and they were like, take me to your leader, we'd be like, yeah, no, you can't go talk to that guy. And then he'd be like, okay, well then bring me to your second leader.
You're like,
And we're like, no, I can't talk to her. he's like, okay, well then bring me to the leader that you had before this one. And we're like, no, you don't want to talk to any of them.
You'd bring them to Elon Musk. That's
Maybe I don't know who you would bring him to. Maybe Alex Jones. You just bring him to Alex Jones. Be like, this guy's been talking about you guys for a long time.
I tell you,
He's
you're
your
not
biggest
following him on X.
You should talk to him.
I look up in the morning. I'm like, "Ooh, what's Alex Jones talking about?" And I know I take it with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
But I'm always like, "What's he talking about today?"
I tell you what, the guy's not spot on, but more often than not, he's over the target.
He's more spot on than the news.
Well, that's for sure. I mean,
Yeah.
he doesn't have all kinds of advertising companies telling him what he can and can't do.
Yeah.
We're like, I would imagine his dad isn't like, be like, hey, you can't talk about this because Dr. Jones Naturals is gonna have a bad sales day. All right. We're like an hour 35 in. I think we're good.
Did we get to everything you wanted to get to?
Well, yeah. I mean, this was just kind of off the cuff because there wasn't
Oh.
like a big spiritual thing. We definitely could have gotten into the spirituality of some of this stuff, but
Well, I will say that when you're watching the news and watching these people make things, you can breathe deeply. And it's always good to ask questions.
do some meditation.
To be like, well, why am I focused on this woman from Algeria? And what else is happening?
Yeah.
And just to go, oh, I wonder what else is happening right now.
Yeah. While all of this stuff is going on, you asked like, what are they covering up, or like, what are people not paying attention to? I mean, you essentially had Israel bomb. Was it Beirut?
Oh, I saw that. You also had talk of Iran, a war with Iran. No, Iran.
Yeah.
So you had what's his name, Lindsey Graham.
Yeah, that's
come
what
out and propose for a war with Iran.
That's the next war.
Yeah. So you had that come out during the Olympics,
and that's the war. That's the war they've wanted for a long time, because
I don't. My kids are of age.
Well,
almost.
Dave Smith has talked about this a lot, where I forget what the doctrine was. There was a doctrine that was put out and disseminated by, I believe, the first Bush as president. And that doctrine was essentially how they were going to remake the Middle East. Or actually, no, I'm sorry. It was actually put out, I believe, in the 60s. And then once the 80s and early 90s came about, they actually finally had like the neocons in place to then execute on it. But so the doctrine essentially names all of the countries that we've basically, Iraq, Afghanistan,
and Iran,
Syria,
is the last one on the list.
Lebanon, like it named all of them. And not that Lebanon's on the list, but like in Syria, like Yemen, all of these countries get named within that doctrine. Iran's the only one that we haven't waged war in.
Well, I'll tell you
the
what,
last one
this
standing.
is the thing. So that was just thinking now. I remember I just read that yesterday. Just thinking now that's something that happened during this whole thing, that Lindsey Graham came out calling for, like, I forget, we were trying to get something signed and pushed through about war with Iran.
Yeah.
And so that was happening. And when, and sometimes we talk about this, it's unnerving. It's like, it's scary because you don't have much control. It's like, the only thing you can take care of is yourself, your family. So like, I think the best thing to do if you get in an overwhelming place is I try to just, you need to clear your energy and like take care of yourself and feed yourself the organic food and take a nap when you need it and try to get your heart open and your head open and just breathe, because in the end, I think that does help a lot of physical stuff.
Yeah.
When your anxiety and everything's going on,
well,
if you put your head out there too far, shit's scary.
Yeah.
It's scary.
Well, you end up going down one of those rabbit holes where it's like you feel just pulled down it. And you don't come to for like a couple of hours at least.
And then if you do, you come back a different person in a lot of ways. Like I just went down the rabbit hole of toilet paper. I don't know if anyone has heard this rabbit hole. It's fucked up though. So toilet paper uses formaldehyde and bleach. And they're saying that the higher numbers of colon cancers and rectal cancers, and the chemicals in toilet paper can actually be a cause of this. So now I went down that fucking rabbit hole, and I like it's you can't stop it. Formaldehyde is used to strengthen the paper when wet
Yeah.
to prevent it from breaking down. Oh my God.
Chlorine is used to bleach the paper.
Dioxins, for instance, a byproduct of chlorine bleaching process. These are all, and so you actually, you know what they say, if you put alcohol in your butt, you get it faster, right? Is that something you were talking
Well, yes, no, it's
so you're in that area.
Your lower digestive tract is very absorbent.
You were absorbing,
yeah.
right? And like, so I thought I'd never go down a toilet paper. Like, I never thought I would.
Yo, I've been wiping my ass with leaves for a couple of weeks.
Don't do it. No, I'm about to get the bamboo stuff. I'm about to get something. I'm like, I can't spend more money on toilet paper. I spend no money. But like, if you go down it, they talk about the amount of colon and rectal cancers and how, and that being an absorbing stop. You just don't do it to yourself, or start buying bamboo toilet paper.
Well, I mean, it's kind of like credit card debt. You should probably pay attention to it, and then when you do, you should probably act
immediately
accordingly.
So when you go down these rabbit holes, because there are a fucking lot to go down.
Yeah.
They're everywhere. Like, just remember, I think that I say this to myself. Like, if I can clear my energy, if I can clear my aura, if I can, be in a good place spiritually, I feel like I have a little bit of a buffer. Yeah. If I can teach my kids how to do that, there's a little bit of a buffer.
I also like,
bamboo toilet paper.
I've gotten away from the practice, but gratitude journaling is a big deal. Helps ground you.
Meditating, breathing.
I really like
Epsom salt baths.
I really like gratitude journaling because the things that you're gracious for,
grateful
for, things that you're grateful for don't have to be these like huge things. They can be these small, very grounding things in your life, like simple as good toilet paper.
That's what I was going to say. That when I get the new toilet paper, you're going to be like, in your gratitude journal.
Yes, yeah.
Toilet paper and without formaldehyde.
And when you're faced with these other things that make you feel like the world is collapsing in, or nothing can get any better, or you're just irritated that people are so retarded in the White House, you can look back at these very grounding things and be like, you know what?
And lean into it.
For me, a lot of times it comes back to my relationship with you, the kids, our home that we've made a home, our animals that are laying around us right now.
Yeah.
Like I come back to that, and that helps a lot. It's a huge white pill. And what's very important is I think a lot of people need to spend a lot less time worrying about all the rest of this shit and really worry about themselves and their family and their animals and their home and their health. Like, I
mean, it's not saying you have to avoid all this stuff, but you're going to go down rabbit holes. You're going to go down especially during presidential elections, all this crazy shit going on. You do want to keep in touch with it, but I always keep it a little bit detached.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, like, having been doing this for decades, like, especially with certain areas, like, I've been in those moments where it's pulled me down.
Yeah.
And it's like overwhelming because you don't feel like you have any say, and you feel like you're being done to. You feel victimized.
Yeah. And
that's never a good place. So it's like you have to steady yourself. So yeah, and get fucking bamboo toilet paper, because I also UTIs. Yeast infection. Oh my God. I mean, maybe it has to do with fertility too. Who the fuck knows? I'm not going down it anymore.
Well, also,
I'm just going to order bamboo toilet paper.
The bidet also helps with stuff like
we have
that
a bidet.
Right? Yeah.
But you're still using toilet paper.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, you could go the reusable cloth diaper route. But...
No, I'm not doing that. There are people who do reusable toilet cloths.
Oh.
I'm not up for that. But I will do, I can get a thing of 96 of them for like $40. 96 toilet paper thingies.
Bamboo?
The bamboo. Okay. No chemicals.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to do that whenever we get money.
Yeah, before we do that, we're going to have the conversation with the kids and be like, look, no more than 3 sheets every time you wipe.
We can use the rest of our toilet paper to clean up the bearded dragon shit.
Oh.
Yeah, so it'll still be used,
A very key insight into our lives. People. And on the note of rabbit holes, we will continue to go down them, but try to inject an ounce of perspective when we do it. So
yes.
All right. Anything else to say?
That's it. I'm good.
Yeah. All right.
We went 2 hours almost.
Pretty close. Yeah. Look, thank you very much for taking the time and the energy and the attention.
We have a bunch of people to get to bring guests on. We have
Yes.
like 15 to 16 guests
Yeah.
ready and rocking.
And if you have any guests you would like to see on, please,
or any
put,
topics,
put it in the
'cause-
comments, tag them, whatever you want.
If
Yeah.
we know what kind of topics we want to talk about being ungovernable with,
Yeah.
we
So.
can get to that. I have a bunch of people waiting.
All right. With that, thank you very much, everyone. Have a fantastic
Yeah,
evening
have a
and a
good
great week. We will see you next Sunday.
Yep.
Peace.